Wheat for an announcement.
I'd just like everyone to know that former Councillor Esteemed, who was my ward mate, has lost his mom. She's been sick for quite some time. There's only one visitation. It's tonight from 7 to 9 effective late. Consequently, I'll be leaving here at 8 o'clock if the meeting is over.
Thank you, Councillor Wheat. Approval of the agenda. Anything new to add to the agenda first? I have something under new business. That being said, can I get approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Coleman, seconded by Councillor Pierce. All those in favor? Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Please state them now. Thank you. Delegations. Bill from the Salvation Army. You want to come up? Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I might just adjust this a little bit. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity just to come and talk to you. More of an update than anything as well about the work that the Salvation Army is doing. My name is William Radelband. I'm the Family and Services Coordinator for the Salvation Army for the past 14 years and have lots of background with the Salvation Army. My grandparents were Salvation Army officers in England and Ireland, so it runs deeply. Am I supposed to operate this thing? Yeah. Okay. So I spend a lot of my time both in Brantford and in Paris, and Paris is very dear to my heart as I lived here, and I come to you not just as an employee, but I am a member, a resident of the county. I live in Mount Pleasant since about 2010 as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring you up to date. A little bit of background if people are not as well versed, probably as myself, in terms of the Salvation Army. One of the largest service provider of social services in Canada. We're in over 400 communities across Canada and now internationally about 131 countries in the world. So a lot of things. In Canada alone, we provide 7,300 shelters, addictions, detox and mental health beds for vulnerable men, women, and families in Canada. There's a lot of serving of meals, so there's about 3.2 million free meals that have been provided, and the Salvation Army assisted 1,236,000 persons with food, clothing, or practical assistance. So I do a lot of the work with the food bank and clothing. We do a lot of outreach, both here in Paris and in Brantford as well. So core values of the Salvation Army, they've recently been updated. Hope, that comes through our faith in who we are. We are a Christian organization. Service, we believe in getting out there and doing as much as we can. Dignity for all people. And I think that's from any background, ethnicity, sexual orientation, you name it. We're not here to discriminate against anyone. We're just here to walk with people. So pillars of my ministry, which are a little different, I think, in some ways. Dignity, respect, non-judgment. I believe that everyone deserves that respect. We have to learn to show acceptance. We're here just to walk with people in general. So just in case you didn't know where we are located, because it's been quite some time since I've actually come to council as we try to financially kind of support ourselves quite well in-house as much as we can. So we're at 25B Dundas Street West in Paris. We are open twice weekly, Mondays 1 to 3 and Thursdays 1 to 3. So there's another front picture. We chose this location as well because it was a lot more visible. People knew that we were around. I think sometimes in smaller communities, food banks, some people have, it's kind of a negative connotation sometimes about people seeing that they're needing assistance. But I really believe that we're a really important part of our community, and we're proud of it. And so it gives us opportunities to display things via the windows. We have a Paris resident that changes the window kind of settings and all that in accordance to the time of year. We serve people right here in Paris and in Brant County, so it's not just a Paris-only type of thing, who need food, can't pay their bills, rent, someone who could be your next-door neighbor. So we serve everyone who needs it, individuals, couples, families, seniors, a lot more seniors, doing a lot more visiting, also some teenage kind of intervention with parents as well that I do. So obviously sometimes people that are coming in are on fixed income. Could have been someone who's lost their job, had an unexpected expense, family breakup, that often hits us and is the need for services. And people with addictions and mental health. That's a big part of some of the people that I work with and dealing with anxieties and different things like that, and just having people to connect with. Typically about 1 in 10 people are affected in some way by poverty. So we serve about 300 to 350 individuals per month in Paris. That number probably has gone down somewhat, just with difficulties in finding subsidized housing. So we provide food assistance once per month. We run groups out of our location to assist individuals with budgeting, anger management programs that I run. And sometimes that's just one-on-one, someone who's coming in off the street that has been referred to us or is just struggling. And sometimes it's just having that someone to talk to, how to deal through problems, and anger really is, it's overwhelming emotions that they can't control, right? So I recently supported a family through court, actually lives here right in Paris, a very rough situation. And so I was able to be with them in court and help them through that process. So, and interestingly, this child has also gone to our adventure camps in Paris. So we send about 10 kids from Paris every year. And we just have a strong responsibility and passion because it's what we really believe that we should be doing. I just want to put a big shout out to Shirley Simons, who runs the Paris Community Christmas Hampers, which I have been involved in the past. I was one person between 2 locations and the job got a little busy. I will make one note to that. The working poor in our society is getting bigger. I was able to serve, because they were people that could not go to the Paris Fairgrounds to pick up their hampers. I served 40 families who were working poor in Brantford that still needed that assistance. So that's not a slight on the job they're doing, because I think they're doing an amazing job, but there are things that are kind of out of the box type of thing. So yeah, we were able to assist them in that way because that percentage is really increasing. So obviously I said emergency food assistance. It's a drop-in scenario, very welcoming. We run coats for kids. I've helped a few county families in crisis situations. So there's been a couple burnouts and things, so we bring food and clothing in those situations. We send 10 kids from Paris who can't otherwise afford to go. So that basically it costs us about $250 per kid, which is very minimal if you know anything about camp costs. So there's our website there too, which is our regional ilovecamp.ca. We have run free income tax clinics for anybody and everybody as long as they kind of fit within a certain financial spectrum. So we do about 100 returns here in Paris every year. So we've been doing that since 2015. There's our website. Also offer clothing, furniture, startups, emergency housing, sometimes people in rent scenarios. And we do that quite a bit in partnership with the City of Brantford as well, with housing that is here, run out of Parks and Rec building. We've run, and we just recently did a Crockpot Club, just to help some of our clients with some of the stuff they are getting from the food bank, to help them make some quick and easy meals, because those skills aren't always there. I do one-on-one and group budgeting. This past couple years, we've kind of partnered with the County of Brant with Parks and Rec and have helped with those back-to-school carnivals, and which is amazing. And yeah, in the past, I have been involved. I ran a hot dog program in the park for about 3 or 4 years. Did an adult drop-in as well with the Presbyterian Church, which was a really good effort to kind of bring some of the services all together. So we've been able to help. We were able to help people more in crisis. Now I seem to be getting a little bit more of those calls, but I'm also actively involved with the Parish Ministerial as well. Yeah, just about poverty in general. I think poverty and homelessness, there's the visible and invisible, so kind of couch surfing, the hidden homeless. Yeah, and just, you know, when someone's thinking about what's going on in your community, I know our big giving time is Thanksgiving to Christmas, and that's fantastic, but it's not just a Christmas problem. It's an all year round problem, and that really deserves our attention. Yeah, and I don't know if you know, but the worst time for food banks is May 24 and beyond. It's not typically the Christmas time, because people want to give, people want to do stuff, they want to get involved, which is fantastic, but just know that there's lots of other things just besides a food bank. Memberships. So we are a member of Feed Ontario, which is your provincial organization. So each community is a member. So that gives us a lot of different things. So we only pay a fee of $750 a year. Probably the actual fee that actually comes back to me in food offers is over $25,000. So it's a pretty good bang for your buck, and we're grateful for that. And that's also, we're an affiliate member with Food Banks Canada. So they support us in a lot of different ways, whether that's fundraising ideas. So yeah, and so we also kind of through that, we belong to a distribution center in Kitchener-Waterloo area. So that allows us to go and pick up frozen, fresh, dry products as well. And that fee, I believe, is just over $1,000. I think it's 1,122 or something like that. But the amount that we actually get in return is huge. So we're able to help. What's going on in food banks as well, a lot of people get zeroed in on the non-perishable. About 40% of what I give out is fresh. So we have, beyond just the shelves and the non-perishable stuff, which is still important, but that we have 2 freezers, a fridge and a freezer in Paris alone, and then I have a walk-in freezer in Brantford and huge cooler there as well. So it just helps us to be able to accept donations. Right now, what's going on, there's a huge food drive with Farm Credit Canada, and it's focused on rural poverty. So 2 of the schools right here in Paris, one is already just given to us, Sacred Heart and Holy Family, and we're hoping that more and more schools get on to that end, but they run this food drive all over the country in about every, go ahead.
You're creeping up on 10 minutes.
Okay, am I already?
Yeah,
All right. So I kind of went over some of the costs, and just it takes for us to run that. Yeah. I kind of believe we're pretty crucial to this community, and I just want you to kind of consider what it, if there's any way that, council can support us in any capacity, I would be very grateful for that. The biggest thing probably is we're having our kettle kickoff here in Paris this year, so which we're grateful for at the Cenotaph. And then we have a couple of events going on, Multi-Vendor Expo, that's going to be at Paris Fairgrounds on the 30th. So we tried that last year, we sold about 100 bags, I think, and then we're upping that, and Core Dance assists us with a big food drive at No Frills, so.
Thank you. Sorry to rush you like.
No,
that.
it's fine, I understand.
Are there any questions of the delegation? Councillor at the very end.
So currently, and thanks for your presentation, I've
Yep.
been involved for years, and
Yes, I know you have.
So, we don't currently provide any ongoing funding for your organization as.
No, and we've traditionally tried very hard not to kind of go to the well a lot. But I know it's getting tougher, I would say, yeah.
When we see the value for dollar, something like the Feed Ontario annual fee of $750 per year, having a value of almost $25,000 per year, is that something that if one of us was to suggest maybe either writing a grant application for, or
Yeah,
doing some sort of
I
ongoing
will be doing that as well. I've been in touch, and so we'll get going on that.
Let's talk about it after the
Yep.
meeting. And also, I want to thank you for clarifying the piece on the Salvation Army and the LGBTQ community, because every year when I support the Salvation Army, I get questions about it.
Yes, it is controversial, but
well,
there's, like, if you go on to salvationarmy.ca, for example, there is a strict thing on non-discrimination, right?
And the fact that wasn't any Canadian Salvation Armies, it was 20 years ago, lots of.
Well, I can tell you, yes, I had a transgendered volunteer about a year ago, and he was one of the best volunteers I ever had. And that's part of our community. And so we shouldn't be. And who am I to judge that? So, yeah.
Councillor Wheat?
No question, I was just going to move to extend time.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions to the presenter? If not, thank you very much, and thank you for all you do. And I know that you do work all year round, but this is your visual busy season coming up, and I wish you a lot of success.
Yeah.
And how does council want to dispose of the delegation? Deferred to budget? Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, so just to clarify, you are going to be filling out an application for a grant?
Yes.
Perfect. That's what I was going to suggest, to make sure he does that, and then we'll go through to budget. So that's receive and ensure it goes to budget. Yeah.
Perfect. Seconder? Councillor Howes? All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Number 5, adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Howes?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell, the approval of minutes from the previous meeting of September 24th, including all the pages.
Are there any questions for Councillor Howes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Consent items. There are items to be approved, none. Consent items to be received as information. Councillor Chambers?
Mr. Mayor, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce that the consent items be received as information.
Seeing none being separated, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 8, committee reports. The Planning Advisory Committee, please, from October 1st. Councillor Wheat.
It's approved by myself and seconded by Member Pierce at the Planning Advisory Committee point of October 1st, 2019, be accepted, knowing there are 6 items.
Any questions to Councillor Wheat? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 8B, Community Services Committee Report. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the Community Service Report of October 7th be approved, noting there are 4 recommendations.
Councillor Miller.
Could we just remove the one item?
Which one, Councillor Miller?
The one on the 3 community centers?
You want that separated? You want to speak to that?
Item 3, yes.
All right. We'll vote on everything else. All those in favor? Opposed? And we'll speak to number 3. Councillor Miller?
Just a question there. We're looking at 3 different indoor rec facilities. I wasn't aware we were looking at 3 until I read this. What's the justification for that?
For the 3 gymnasiums? It was all part of, my understanding, it was part of the recreation master plan that suggested that we would need them. Michael?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, I can provide some further context to that. So the Recreation Master Plan recommended 3 studies be taken over the next 5 years. The first was a study for an expansion of the Brant Sports Complex. The second was a repurposing of the Sillaps Community Center. And the third was the creation of a municipal gymnasium. And we brought a report forward to Community Services Committee about a year and a half ago and suggested that we do those 3 studies concurrently because they had a lot of overlap. And so the report that came to Community Services addressed 2 of those requests, the expansion of the Sillaps Community Center and the Municipal Gymnasium. I'm sorry, the expansion of the Brant Sports Complex and the Municipal Gymnasium. It hasn't yet addressed the Sillaps Community Center, which was put on hold because of the library's request to be included in that. So that'll come forward at a later date. So.
You feeling better about that, Councillor Miller?
I'm just not quite clear on what we're voting on, and that the recommendations be directed to the 2020 budget deliberations. What are we looking at to determine in the 2020, that just the RFP for consulting? Is that what we're looking at, and that's it?
Michael?
We're not actually building them next year.
Oh, I wish. No, it would be to go to budget for the price of the building the facilities, is my understanding.
Councillor Miller?
Again, are we just looking at putting money aside for an RFP for consulting? Is that what we're looking at?
My understanding, it'll be going to budget to put funds aside to build the facility.
I'm going to ask, Michael, can you clarify that?
Ms. Stevenson can.
All right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The decision package for budget will include costs that would be incurred by the municipality for both projects in 2020, which we would expect tender for architect, design fees, and those things. That's going to take a few months to get through. The build itself would likely start in 2021, but that would be part of the decision package as well.
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, three facilities in 2021. Is that what I'm hearing that we want to build? If it's approved at budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, the BSC expansion is the priority through the report that came through Community Services Committee. So that is expected to proceed, but we would like to include in the decision package to have the architect design fees done as a combination for both, but the build itself for the turf facility likely would not begin in 2021, it would be further out. And just to add to that, those projects, we are applying for funding through the community culture grant. So we are proceeding through that right now, but we don't know whether or not we will receive that funding.
And if I might follow up, Mr. Mayor, is one of these facilities in the destination park where there's no housing yet?
Yes.
Or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The indoor turf facility is part of the destination park lands, when we're also planning to have some outdoor turf space at the same location.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, Mr. Mayor, if we could separate these items, because I think that we're approving something that we really don't know a lot about. I don't think I've seen the master or the business plan that was mentioned for these three facilities, maybe it was presented at Community Services? And what are the total cost?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, we're not making the decision tonight that we are doing this all tomorrow. What this decision is to put this to budget, to vote on it as a package, as all the other packages in budget are. It'll be put to budget as a package of X number of dollars for the RFP, for the expansion of the BSC, for building the indoor field house turf. And as well, sorry, Mr. Mayor, and as well, had the SILAPs not been set aside due to potential of the library being there, I would assume that that would also have been in this report.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think up until last week, we didn't know the library had closed the door on the SILAPs. So that's why it's being brought forward altogether like that, so. I don't think, are you looking for a seconder to separate number 3, Councillor Gatwood, or just let it go? You want to separate number 3 and do something with it, or just let it be? But you were speaking to it, and you said you wanted to have it separated. Are you looking for a seconder for that? Or just let it go through as information?
You wanted to separate them, the prices of them, the facilities?
Oh, you're talking about the facilities. No.
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question regarding the main library. SILAPS is on hold because of that. Could you give us some sense, or could staff give some sense of how we're going to deal with that decision? Because a lot of things seem to hang on it.
Michael?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. So I think we've been requested to bring a staff report forward to the November committee cycle on the library's request. I think that will then allow us to proceed and go either carry the current design for SILAPS forward or to go back to the drawing board, depending on what council decides with the library's request. So I mean, I think the consultant has all the information they need for either option. It's just about probably just tightening up their plan and then bring it back to community services. I would see that in December or January. So.
Would that allow us to put it into our proposed 10-year financial plan? Would we have enough data to do that?
Yeah, through your worship, yes, we could. And we will probably, the financial plan we're working on now, we'll probably put a placeholder number in there for an updated SILAPS Community Center, notwithstanding the council hasn't actually seen a final design.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Carried. 8C, Corporate Development Committee, a special meeting. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Chambers, that the Corporate Development Committee minutes of the special meeting on October 7th, 2019 be received as information.
Councillor Pierce, you're next.
Okay. I'm 8C as well, though,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Any questions, Councillor Miller, for the special meeting?
I'm 8C.
You're next.
8D. I know, but it should be 8D.
Is everyone clear on what we're doing here? Councillor Miller, you're okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good,
All right.
yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Pierce.
I'm up. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers. 8D, Corporate Development Community Special Meeting, October 7th, 2019 minutes, that the recommendation 6 of the Corporate Development Committee minutes of the special meeting on October 7th be received for information.
Any questions, Councillor Ferrier?
Sorry, is this the special meeting or the
This is D.
D, which
D
is
like
not the special
David.
meeting, but the regular
Yeah.
meeting?
C was the special.
I would like to request that we separate 8D, recommendation 11 regarding the downtown master plan.
All right. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we also have a discussion on item 12?
You're so confused.
You were just supposed to move one item, and that was the John Walker.
Okay, so we're separating 11 and 12. So if there's no other questions, then anything else? Councillor Coleman? Yep. I want OPP, number 8. Number 8?
Number 12, I think, right?
It's not, oh no, it's number 12, Councillor Coleman. So it's already been pulled, so 11 and 12 are pulled? 12. Okay, number 10, number 11, and number 12. Don't call bingo. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, we'll have to have a chat after this with Heather. 8D, I think, is that what we're on now, Heather?
Yeah, so we're on 8D. Councillor Miller had declared a conflict with respect to 6, which I tried to transfer over to Councillor Pierce, but it's just a copy of the resolution sheet, is from the old one. So Councillor Miller is presenting recommendations 1 through 16, excluding number 6.
Yes.
And then Councillor Pierce is doing number 6, so,
And that would make my life a lot easier if we could just do that one separate, so.
Yeah.
Which I tried to drive home earlier.
Okay, so we've separated number 6 that Councillor Pierce is going to speak to, and we've also taken out 10, 11, and 12. So we could call a vote on everything but those 4. All those in favor? Okay, we're going to deal with number 6. Councillor Pierce.
So you have to back out on this one, right? Okay. We're good to go here. So recommendation number 6 of the Corporate Development Committee meeting minutes of the special meeting October 7th be received as information. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers.
Any,
It's close.
any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 10, Councillor Coleman.
Sorry about that.
I had concerns about this at the CDC committee meeting on this, and I do think this is, we're not charging, or the OPP is not charging enough for these bulk jobs. I think we need to be in sync with what our fire department is. I can live with the warning letter the first time, but we cannot send an officer and vehicle, and most likely there'll be 2 officers or 2 vehicles for $150 for a false alarm. And so I believe we should send this back to staff and relook at it and come in at a fee schedule that is competitive with what it would cost to put them on the road. And I think that's the way I'm looking at it, seeking a seconder on that, Mr. Mayor.
Can I get a seconder to put it on the floor for more conversation? Councillor Wheat, thank you. Any other discussion for that? Councillor Gatward?
I just want to be clear. This is the county that's charging this, not the OPP. It's the county, and the county receives the funds.
I understand.
Right.
Councillor Ferrier?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could this get back to this esteemed group before in a cycle so that we could actually have it passed for January 1st so we don't have an overlap?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I'm in favor.
Yeah. Anything else to add to that before we move on? Okay, so we're going to send it back. Number 11. Oh, sorry, want to vote on it?
Not by fiat.
It's not, that's right. We had a seconder. All those in favor? Send it back. Thank you. 11.
Yes, I have a few questions on this. This is the downtown master plan, just some clarification questions. I know there's been a lot of interest that some people have come late to the party. I just want to clarify a few things. One, there's been over 18 months of public consultation on this, correct? Yes?
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, consultation started in 2017.
And that each phase will have an additional community consultation before going to construct?
That's correct.
And just one more time, and I know we know it around the table, but I know some folks are literally watching today because this is the first they've heard of it, because that's how news spreads sometimes, not for lack of trying. But the biggest hiccup I hear about, or the vitriol is around the parking garage. So I was just wondering if we could explain the justification for the parking garage and the location specifically of the parking garage, where the current parking lot is.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We examined the municipal property that's owned in the downtown in response to demand for additional parking and feedback that we got from the community. We have limited options, one being the back lot and one being the lot immediately behind council chambers that could accommodate a parkade. It was decided that this was the better option, the one put forward behind council chambers, and that it could incorporate other amenities, potentially. So things like electric vehicle charging stations, bicycle storage, community space. At that point, we were considering potentially the library or another municipal use, but that has yet to be determined. And it was a central location, allowing the least amount of distance for people to walk to actually reach the downtown core.
And it would allow for businesses, employees, and residents of the downtown core to have the potential to have monthly passes instead of paying a ton of parking fees or having to close up shop to go move their car every 3 hours?
Through you, Your Worship, that is what we've proposed. That would certainly be council's decision, and we will bring forward different scenarios and options, but that is what we have proposed for the public option.
And it sounds like consideration and there were examination of parking garages that haven't worked to the municipal benefits, such as those in Brantford, et cetera, and this is very different in terms of location and build and design than parking garages such as that.
Through Your Worship, we've certainly recognized that it would have to be very carefully designed, that we do want to incorporate other uses. It wouldn't simply just be a parkade, and most importantly, the facade would have to be complementary to the surrounding area.
Thank you so much. Just the questions that come through to us, and I just wanted to get some final clarification before voting. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything else? Does anyone else have anything for number 11, the downtown? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 12, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I recall correctly from the Corporate Development Committee meeting, we had a discussion about the length of the next contract, and I think we held it over till this meeting for further discussion. My own personal perspective is that there is merit in having a shorter period than 5 years in order to see whether the potential service enhancements that we take up in this new contract are actually effective. If for some reason they don't work, then I don't want to wait 5 years before we make some changes to the contract that will be to the benefit of the community.
We have had conversations about that. I'll let Mr. Bradley speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did speak to the Municipal Policing Bureau at OPP, and they indicated that their minimum contract term is 3 years, because it's a fairly hefty investment they make. But they also noted that the contract also specifies a 1-year notice period for termination. So I think the answer to the question is a 3-year contract is the minimum, but if council wanted to get out of it earlier, they could give 1 year of notice, and then the contract would end.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure how to take this forward. It's left unsaid. Do we need to give direction to staff on the duration of the contract that they should be negotiating?
Mr. Bradley?
Through you, Your Worship, I think, council could either make that direction now, or you could make that direction when the report comes forward with a draft contract. So I think it is council's decision. You could, I think, make an amendment to the Corporate Development Committee recommendation, or you could leave it, and you could deal with that when it comes forward.
I would be comfortable if we can deal with it as you bring forward the report, unless there is something in the negotiations that would be impacted by not having clarity about the length of the contract.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Coleman.
I would move right now, 3 years.
Seeking a seconder? Councillor Coleman? Councillor Bell? Everyone's clear? What is your motion?
3-year contract.
3-year contract. Any discussion? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm confused on how these things work, but and I'll direct, if I could, the question to the CEO. In some situations, in some contracts, the longer the contract, sometimes the better the price. And if we restrict our ask to 3 years, it would be nice maybe to have a comparison of 5 years, and maybe the 3 years would be cheaper, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure whether this resolution would restrict that option to be looked at, but I would like that option to be looked at if it would impact the price. And you can give me some direction on that.
Mr. Bradley?
Through your worship, so the OPP contract is formulaically based, and so it's always going to be based on the formula, whether it's a 3 or 5, 4 or 5. It's my understanding. So I don't think that a 3-year contract should generate a different price than a 5-year contract, because again, it's based on the formula. So, and again, I think, as I said, it's a very short, small contract. It's about a 4-page contract. Very much says, and it is very much reliant on the legislation behind the Police Services Act and the Adequate and Effective Policing Act. That's where the meat of the contract is, and that's what directs the OPP on how they're going to provide policing. So,
Councillor Bell?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Michael. The second item talks about commencing discussions with the OPP with regard to potential service enhancements. Do you feel you have enough clarity and direction from the council as to what those service enhancements should be?
Mr. Bradley?
Through you, Your Worship, I think it was outlined in the report what the concerns are. I have actually been in contact with the detachment commander and Municipal Policing Bureau about that process, and they will. I will be meeting with them shortly, but they're suggesting that a committee be struck to develop the business case for those enhanced services, which I think then will allow maybe further discussion and probably some return back to council with a business case that council will have to agree to before it goes off to OPP headquarters. So,
Councillor Ferrier?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Chambers when looking at the idea of potentially handcuffing negotiations. And though it's a formula, we still have provided direction around negotiation. I'd rather not handcuff. I also think it might send a message of being not necessarily open to 5 years, which may be the point of the resolution, but I'd like to be open. I think it sends a message. I'd rather get some information back from negotiations before I'd rather do that than pre-decide on a term length, so I won't be supporting the 3-year resolution.
Okay, we have 3 years. Oh, Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this wasn't on the agenda. It's a change to the item that's listed in the report. And I don't believe 3 years is the best option. The reason being it would bring this right to the end of this council term, and a new council would have to deal with this issue. So I would agree with Councillor Chambers that we wait and let the information come forward in the CAO's report.
All right, we have Councillor Chambers?
Just to clarify my comments, that wasn't a suggestion I made. It was a question on whether the ramifications of that. I didn't suggest that it be 5, 3, or otherwise.
Anything else? Are we clear? We're voting for a 3-year contract. It's on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor of 3 years? All those opposed? It's defeated. Yeah, we're back to the original recommendation then. Thank you. Oh, the original one has to be voted on. So the way it's written in the package, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Number E, Public Works Committee, Councillor Gatward.
Yes, it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that the Public Works Committee report from October 8th be approved. And there's 5 recommendations there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions to Councillor Gatward? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have a question for the Chairman Gatward. You will recall it was last term that the residents of Scotland made a delegation about the concerns of traffic and speeding and truck traffic, et cetera, to the previous council, I'm sure. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but it was in the last term at some point. And then jump forward to the September Public Works meeting when some correspondence from a Crystal Hinch was presented, and which reiterated some of the concerns that were brought forward previously. And then jump ahead to the last Public Works Committee meeting where a delegation from the town of Oakland made a compelling and a convincing argument about some of the safety concerns in that community. And then jump ahead further, this evening we're going to be looking at a resolution about some of the concerns in Southwest Paris with regard to the similar traffic safety issues. So I actually have three questions, and the first question is, it would seem that let me back up. In the Scotland situation, the road committee passed a recommendation that the speeding concerns in Scotland be referred to the Brant Safe Street Strategy. And then the Oakland situation went a few steps further. The committee requested staff a report in one meeting cycle to assess the appropriate safety measures that can be implemented. And then the situation in South Paris goes about 3 or 4 steps further and is actually asking for a pilot project and a consulting exercise to determine what's going to happen there. So my questions are 3 questions. First, why should the concerns of the residents of Scotland be any different from the concerns of the residents of Oakland? Second question, why should the concerns of the residents of Oakland be treated any different than concerns of the residents of Southwest Paris? And the third question is, why should the concerns of the residents of Southwest Paris be treated any different than the concerns of the residents of Scotland?
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very good questions, Councillor Chambers. I do believe, yes, I do recall the delegation from Scotland. They were very concerned about trucks in the village, and there is a 3-way stop there at the main corner, and the trucks sometimes get tangled up at that corner. And the residents aren't appreciative, especially since they now have the Toyota Sioux trucks going to Simcoe through the village. And we tried to divert some of those trucks off of the village streets by sending them down Maple Grove Road. I don't know for sure if that's working. It was referred to Safe Streets, Crystal Cinch, and Oakland, I believe, is already referred to the Safe Streets. I'm trying to remember why it was sent to staff, whether it was to do with the trucks. I'm going to ask Mr. Mayor if the general manager can remember why or who made that motion.
Come on up, please.
Through the mayor to council. My recollection of Public Works Committee is we had the delegation. They came forward, presented their delegation. There was discussion at committee, and one of the committee members made that recommendation. This was not a staff recommendation.
Right. Okay. And
How are you making out,
it's not
Councillor
an
Gallagher?
it's not an actual report item, is it?
Councillor Chambers.
I guess maybe I'll condense my three questions into one, and it's a simple question. It seems that the road committee, or the Public Works Committee, sorry, has treated three different situations in three different manners when the actual issue is the same. And it's going to be difficult, I think, to explain to the residents of Scotland why their concerns were, quote, referred to the Brant Safe Streets Strategy, and their counterparts in Oakland, they get to have a staff report and looking at safety measures that can be implemented, and if the other one goes anywhere, then they're going to get a pilot project and a consultant. So the question is, why should we treat any one area any different than the other? It seems that you are, and I'm wondering why.
And I guess I could say, I haven't gotten to the third item yet, the Paris Cobblestone. There was nothing formal from staff on our agenda, but under other business, I believe, one of the committee members brought forward a draft motion, and the draft motion was looked at, it was passed out at the, during other business. The draft motion was looked at by committee members, and we had discussion about it, and we did not take any action on that request from the member of the Public Works Committee, or the member who brought it forward was going to take it back and look at it some more, I do believe, and I have noticed that it's shown up tonight on our council agenda, but it's not through Public Works, unfortunately.
Councillor Chambers.
Just one follow-up question then. I believe it could have been the September meeting or the meeting prior to that, Public Works meeting, that the staff suggested that issues such as this should be referred to the Brant Safe Street Strategy, waiting for a report to come forward to, so that these issues that go well beyond the three issues that I mentioned that have been brought forward over the several years to the road committee. So let me give you one more shot at this and say, do you think that all areas of the county should be treated in an equitable, fair, and likewise manner for issues that are similar in nature, such as the traffic conditions that are outlined in the three examples that I mentioned? And Councillor Miller's passed me another one, and I can pass you 6 more, 10 more, and everybody has various situations in their own wards throughout the county with speeding concerns. And I thought it was the direction of staff to refer these to the Safe Streets Strategy so that they can all be treated in a fair and equitable manner. So don't you think that's a good idea?
You're asking Councillor Gallagher?
I do think that our Safe Streets Strategy should be given a chance. And however, there seems to be some, I wouldn't say opposition to it, but I think that there's some anxiousness for certain issues to be dealt with by certain members in our around our council table. And I think that we should follow our procedures and try and use the Safe Streets program and give it a chance. The general manager was very forthright at the meeting and said that he did not believe some of the items in the motion that was passed out at the meeting. They were contrary, actually, to the Safe Street strategy. So if that helps you, Councillor Chambers, I do believe that most of us probably refer any of our complaints to that Safe Street strategy. I just did 2 this week myself, and that is the fairest way to deal with these types of requests, in my opinion. And I believe that everyone should be treated fairly and the same, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. Councillor Bell.
I don't want to go through what I'm going to say later, but to address one of Robert's questions, should everybody be treated equally? Absolutely not. You've got to consider the specific circumstances of the situation that people are bringing forward. As an example, in Scotland, the issue was driven by people following a bypass route that was never intended to be a bypass. In Oakland, that's how it came across, Robert. In Oakland, it was speeding down a number of streets. In the Paris, Southwest Paris issue, it's about a whole series of things that I'll show you tonight, but it affects 850 children. And I think you have to put in some measure of what is at risk, and you should apply your resources on the basis of addressing the biggest risks first. And so, Robert, whether it's Scotland or Oakland or Paris or St. George, that's not it. The geographical nature is nothing. It's about what is the specific risk that we're trying to alleviate.
Any other conversation? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, let's go back, now that you got my curiosity, you got Councillor Chambers. We'll go back a year or 2 years to the Scotland issue, and there was a staff report. There was a staff report to come up with a designated truck route, and that was the Maple Grove route. And it was also looked at getting them around Oakland or Scotland, and the staff report come back saying it wasn't possible with the roads that was there, the condition they were, so it was left at that. So there was a staff report, just so everybody is clear. This is a minority, you know.
Is everyone clear? Any other conversation? If not, call the vote to accept the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Brant County Power Investment Committee, Councillor Miller.
Just want to make sure Councillor Pierce doesn't have it. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Bell, that the Brant County Power Investment Committee report of October 8th, 2019 be approved.
Any questions for Councillor Miller? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Staff reports. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Waite, to give permission to bid for an architectural and engineering design services for the Gainesville Community Center.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if I could. This one's kind of puzzling because I'm trying to understand where the conflict of interest is here. To me, it's 2 separate entities, if you want to say. One is to render drawings, and the other is to actually build it. And I'm curious here why we would have to get council approval in order to allow this particular party to bid on the building of the facility. I don't see a conflict of interest personally myself. As I say, to me, there was a group that was hired to do drawings, fine and dandy. This is totally separate now with the building. Again, some would say, well, it's their drawing, that would be a conflict of interest. I don't believe it is. I think it's kind of two separate entities, but that's just my opinion on it. So I'm glad we're doing this because I don't see that there's an issue with this.
Councillor Coleman, do you want to speak to that?
I agree with what Councillor Pierce is saying right now.
Can we get that in the minutes, please, if we could?
That he agrees with you?
Yes.
Michael, do you want to speak to that?
Through your worship, I can speak very quickly. The purchasing policy contemplates that projects may be long and may have different firms working on them. So what this contemplates is that a firm may do a bunch of design work, and then that design work will be used to influence a future second part of the project, usually the working drawings and tender. And that firm that does the initial work has an advantage because they did all the initial work. And so in some cases, much more complex projects, that first firm maybe they shouldn't bid on that second part, and staff would recommend they don't, because they do have a significant advantage. In this case, as you said, the work was quite minor. It was just conceptual design. They probably don't have an advantage. The design is all public, so in this case, we're recommending refusal. But that's the basis of that language. We're going to reevaluate when we redo the purchasing policy. It's language that may not be as relevant as it used to be, because we do see more comprehensive tenders for people to do conceptual design, working drawings, and tendering all in the same package. So.
Yeah.
Councillor Bell, or Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but just because they're bidding on the tender to build it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get it. They have to, it's still all in the same process of elimination and scale of everybody else, right? Okay, I'm good with it. Thank you.
Everyone's clear? You've heard the resolution. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ferrier. Thank you. Number 10, information reports. There aren't any. Communications. Councillor Gatward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to read a motion that whereas the Brant Community Foundation, a charity serving Brantford, Brant County, Six Nations of the Grand River, and Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation, builds community vitality, and whereas November 1st, 2019 has been earmarked by the Brant Community Foundation as a day to recognize kindness and humanity in our communities, and whereas Brant Community Foundation is committed to encouraging random acts of kindness as a way to touch the lives of others and make our world a better place. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the County of Brant proclaim November 1st, 2019 to be the Random Act of Kindness Day and encourages all citizens to embrace kindness and pay acts of kindness forward as a key to achieving a better community. And that was moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Coleman. And I had asked that a copy of this be placed in all the customer service offices.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Gatward? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Councillor Gatward. 11B, City of Brantford. Who has that? Oh, it's just part of it. Okay. City of Brantford, the Southwest Community Center and Park application for Invest in Canada Infrastructure Program. What do you want to do with that? Councillor House?
Move to receive as information.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Pierce. Any other discussion? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think that people in certain areas of the county will use this facility, and our residents may use it for tournaments as well. I don't know if we thought of asking the city for the same type of letter for our grant applications, because it can work both ways. And if we want to show our support for this application, perhaps it's not a bad idea. We've sent letters in the past to support Six Nation grants. So I think that we should do it, and we should consider sending the city the same letter to ask them for support for our grant applications that we recently gave permission to the general manager of corporate services for.
Thank you.
Oh, that's my,
Michael, do you have anything to add? No? So we're going to have a vote to support it, the way it's written?
well, there's a motion just to receive.
Just to receive?
Maybe I could add to it then. Receive it and send a letter of support.
Is everyone okay with her adding that? So to receive it and send a letter of support. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Number C, the City of Brantford resolution to negotiate with the County of Brant to develop a shared services agreement for Cockshut Bridge. How do you want to deal with that? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that we refer the request to our staff for a report back to council.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder? Councillor Wheat, to get on the floor.
I'll second it, then I'll.
All right. Do you want to speak to it?
I think this should be referred to Public Works.
Okay,
That's fine with me.
you're fine?
Yep.
So it's going to be referred to Public Works. Everyone's okay with that? It's been seconded. Anything else to say before we vote? All those in favor? Sending it to Public Works. Thank you. D, Grand Erie District School Board concerns regarding intersection of Bobby West Street, Dumfries Road, Grand River Street South. How do you want to deal with that? Councillor Pierce.
I'll move to receive it for now because I'd like to speak to it.
All right, looking for a seconder. Councillor Bell, it's on the floor. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if I could. So a couple things with this. First of all, I think we all understand the intersection that's in question here. It is a very difficult intersection. What I'm trying to understand here is, okay, so it states here the Grand Erie School Board has added an additional bus. That more or less they're saying they're taking that intersection out as far as distance goes for students that are able to take a bus, okay? So what I don't see in this report, does that suggest now that students from the south end of town will be bused and then students from on top of the hill, Dugard and Cobblestone area will all be bused? I don't see that in the report. And just as a little back history on that, this is something that for years I've been trying to get through to the board to have busing down at the south end and have busing at the top of the hill, and it was stated that it wasn't feasible. So this is good news that they're adding this bus. I just want to understand, okay, so where are the bus stops now? Does it include all students from the south, if we want to call it, up the hill, down the hill? This report doesn't state that, and I'd be very interested in that information, because I don't believe that they would be able to fit them all in one bus, because it would probably be, I would suggest maybe 10 years or so ago, the school board changed the fact that you can now have kindergartens on with high school students, or, you know, they don't take separate buses anymore. So, and I know the buses, I actually have a bus stop out front of my house, and the bus is fairly full, so I'm not sure what's going to go on here. I'd look for more information if I could.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to emphasise what Councillor Pierce has said, I had a request from a resident who lived at the south end of Long Lane, and she happened to be 3.25 kilometres outside of the radius from the high school. Kids couldn't get on the bus. So, I mean, just emphasises the point. I mean, does this mean that they will now get on the bus? Or does it mean that everybody south of that junction can now get on the bus? So it does need clarity. But I think there's a bigger issue here. I find it a little disturbing that we have to be told by the Grand Erie School District Board that we have a junction which is unsafe. And I would like to refer this to our Public Works Department to come up with a solution that actually overcomes this problem.
Councillor Gatward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't see this as a busing issue. Busing is not our mandate. It's not up to us. They're asking for a safe intersection, a safe crossing for people on foot. So, yeah, I would agree that we receive it and refer it to Public Works to have it looked at.
Councillor House.
Yeah, I would support that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would support that. As a little bit of background, I believe there was some discussion at the board level about would it be possible to approach the county about having sidewalks added to Bobby West Street, and without there being sidewalks, that right, it's a very steep street, and with the widths that sidewalks need to be now for proper accessibility, I'm not sure you'd have a road left on that street. So given that's some of the context into this specific Bobby West Street issue, and it certainly would warrant some further exploration.
Anyone else have anything to say? Councillor Pierce?
I'm going to go back to what I originally stated, Mr. Mayor. I'd like more clarification. I'm not sure if somebody could call me or I could call them. I don't know. But this report, if you want to call it, really says nothing, because it says they're going to remove the intersection. What does that mean? That means nothing.
So we're going to refer it back to Public Works for more clarity?
But it didn't come from Public Works, Mr. Mayor. It came from the school board. So I'm kind of torn on this. Again.
Well, we can, Councillor Miller?
I was just going to say, if we refer it to staff, I think staff could call the school board and find out, well, what exactly is the issue?
So it's on the floor right now and seconded to take it to Public Works. Let's let that be defeated then, and then we'll take it to staff. So right now, I call the vote on taking it to Public Works. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So it's going to Public Works. It's clear enough for most people at the table, apparently. 11E, St. George Garden Club, Glenmorris Horticultural Society, Paris Horticultural Society requests from the county to participate in efforts to mitigate the pheromites. Phragmites. How do you want to deal with this? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I had a correspondence from the Ontario Horticultural Club regarding phragmites recently, and I referred it to GRCA, and I was going to meet with some GRCA staff this Friday regarding phragmites. So I'm not sure if they would be willing to help partner on this problem or whether there's a better solution, but certainly with the number of complaints I've seen lately, it seems like it's a growing issue in our county. So we need to do something.
And I received information from Shirley Steedman with lots of information. Didn't know how to pronounce it, but I'm glad that I know it isn't bugs. So I think we have all received that information, haven't we? Mm-hmm. Did we get information in our packages? Mm-hmm. From Mrs. Steedman, yeah? Councillor Wheat?
Well, first of all, I think I'll move to receive it. Seeking a seconder, then I'll speak to it.
Councillor Coleman. Councillor Wheat.
No, after listening to Councillor Gatward, if she wants to take this to the GRCA, I will not stand in her way and let her take it to the GRCA, and I'll move that Councillor Gatward take this to the GRCA and see what they come up with, and then come back with an answer at the next council meeting.
If they'd like to partner.
Well, that's my motion, that I move that Councillor Gatward take this to the GRCA and see what she comes up with and come back with an answer at the following council meeting, seeking a seconder.
I have a seconder in Councillor House. Any other discussion? Councillor Gatward, you'll take that on?
Certainly.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor McAlpine.
I was just going to add that the Brant Woodlaw Association would be interested in following this more closely as well. They approached me about this in particular, And Amanda, our bylaw officer, has actually been looking into this problem, and I discussed it with her 2 or 3 months ago, a little bit more thoroughly. And yeah, so I'm glad that would work with them as well. Yeah.
So the Brant Woodlot Association, their bylaw officer or our bylaw officer who?
Our bylaw officer is
Oh.
looking into it. Neil Dunning from the Brant Woodlot Association approached me about it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with all that being said, all those in favor? Thank you, Councillor Gatward, for taking that on. Any questions on anything that we've done so far? Number 13A, Councillor Bell.
This is a proposed motion on traffic calming measures in the Cobblestone Subdivision, Paris. I'm also told it's the Granville Subdivision, so excuse my ignorance there. So I'm going to read it out. Whereas there are 2 adjacent and large elementary schools at the end of Cobblestone Drive in Paris, and whereas the traffic flows are significant and increasing as the Cobblestone area residences grow, and whereas the residents of Cobblestone area have raised their concerns regarding speeding, running stop signs, inappropriate parking and traffic near misses on many occasions, and whereas many neighbouring municipalities have recognised school safety zones and have introduced lower speed limits, and whereas council has endorsed and promoted the Brandt Safe Street strategy and implementation has commenced, and whereas county staff will prepare an update to the Transportation Master Plan during 2020, therefore be it resolved that the speed limit in the whole Cobblestone subdivision be reduced to 40 kilometres per hour as soon as availability of signage and communications permit. That the Cobblestone subdivision be recognised as a pilot area for implementation of Brandt Safe Street strategy approaches such as speed humps, electronic speed notification, additional stop signs and increased enforcement actions, including automated speed enforcement. And that the selected Transportation Master Plan consultant conduct a full traffic calming study on the Cobblestone subdivision as a first action in the study and makes recommendations to Council for implementation by the end of the first quarter of 2020. And I would like to speak to the motion.
Seeking a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Pearce.
Oh, thank you. Okay, discussion.
Could I speak to the motion, Mr.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
In talking about this issue, I hope I'll address some of the issues that Robert Chambers raised, which I think are good issues. I want to bring forward what I believe is a unique road safety situation in the county. We have 2 elementary schools adjacent to each other in the centre of a growing subdivision and one that's still in an active construction phase. We could ask why we ever put 2 schools opposite each other in the middle of a construction zone, but that's not for today's discussion. I've spoken with the principals of both schools, and they receive concerns and complaints regarding traffic and related safety issues on a daily basis. There are 850 kids in those 2 schools, and the principal said that they expect to get to 1,000 within the next 3 years. I've spoken to residents, I've spoken to crossing guards, I've received many emails and texts of concerns, and I'm sure John Pearce has had many as well. And I've been there to observe the busyness of a school rush hour in the morning, and I've witnessed sometimes dangerous activities. Okay, one of these works. That switches me off. There we go. Next one. Can you move me along, Heather? Yes. Yeah, it's easier. These are the issues, and there are 8 of them. I'm not going to go through all 8. I would like to concentrate on a few of them. Speeding on Cobblestone and adjacent streets. You should be aware that our neighbours in Woodstock, Cambridge, Brantford, Toronto, Brampton, Guelph, London, Barry, and I could go on, have moved to 40 kilometres per hour around school zones. And for goodness sake, here in Paris, we have a 40 kilometre school zone on Silver Street. So and on that street we have flashing speed indicators. You should be aware that the likelihood of a child being killed by a car travelling at 30 kilometres an hour versus 50 kilometres per hour is reduced by a factor of over 80%. So there is good solid evidence that lowering the speed limit will make our children safer. So I proposed, one, to bring down speed limits to 40 kilometres per hour in the whole subdivision. And I say the whole subdivision because my conversations with the residents tells me that when people see the traffic build up on Cobblestone, they revert to Marriott or they revert to Crawford Place, and they go down those roads, which we've never actually tackled with speed spies. But their testimony is they go incredibly quickly. Should be aware that we have speed spy information for Cobblestone Drive, which we took on the 29th, or the week before school started. And I was pleased to see that the 85th percentile on Cobblestone is pretty much 50 or 52 kilometres per hour. So people are observing. That said, there are still almost 20% of people going eastbound, i.e. after they've dropped their children off at school, going down that road beyond speed limits. So I would propose that we use planned speed monitors that we have in our Brant Safe Street Strategy arsenal of tools as soft enforcement of this new 40-kilometre speed limit until such time as we have automated speed enforcement. And you should be aware that in the City of London, they're going through an extensive process to ready themselves for the implementation of automatic speed enforcement. Secondly, Cobblestone's an ideal and needy location for trialling the Brant Safe Street Strategy. There are, if I just pick up there, the crossing guard stations lack stop signs. I watched the crossing guard go out when she has one stop sign to support her. The Granville Circle Road has no stop signs, so people whiz past there, and she's got to get kids across to the Catholic school. She takes her life in her own hands, quite literally. And I do feel that we are not doing what we should be doing as a council to support crossing guards whose job is difficult in the first place. Likewise, at the Irongate Drive and Savannah Junction, there is only a stop sign at the end of Savannah. There are no stop signs on Irongate. And the kids are coming down Savannah or from the eastern side of the estate wanting to cross there. And again, the crossing guard has to take his life in his own hands. I think we should install and trial different speed humps or speed cushions. I've had pushback from county staff on this. They say they don't know which ones would work, they don't know what the impacts would be. I think we're at the point now where we have to fish or cut bait, and I think we need to get out there and trial some of these activities, some of these speed humps. It's interesting, if you go to Barry, the ward councillors there have been authorised to set up speed humps in any roads that they feel, through information coming from residents or from their own observations, that they can actually direct county staff in that city to put the speed bumps on the road. I don't want to wait until 2021 until the Transportation Master Plan is updated, though I do applaud the idea that we're looking in detail at traffic calming measures. I believe we're running a risk, and the longer we delay on taking action, the greater that risk becomes. Not to mention the loss of credibility in our Brant Safe Street Strategy. If we take a cold, hard look at it, we have not made a great deal of progress, practically, in the last 6 months. We have some cars now with stickers which indicate that they're pace cars, but for the rest, we have no evidence that the Safe Street Strategy is being applied. We need to step up our game, and my third recommendation, therefore, would be to fast-track a full calming study using the Cobblestone area as a trial area and apply everything we have in the Brant Safe Street Strategy arsenal. And I would like a recorded vote on this one.
Okay, I'm going to call on Michael Bradley to respond.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to, with all due respect, make a comment that I deeply disagree with the sense that our crossing guards, who are county employees, are unsafe. We train them, we provide them with effective and appropriate gear, and I have a responsibility to those people as their supervisor and their employer, as you do, and I would stand behind our training and health and safety programs that we have employees who are well armed to act safely in our workplace, and I emphatically disagree, and I somewhat resent the implication that our staff are unsafe working in our community, Mr. Chair. I apologize, but I feel very strongly that. It's my comments are offered with all due respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I'm sorry that Michael feels that way, but I've been there and I've observed and I've seen the dangers that they put themselves in order to protect our children as they cross the roads. I'm not saying that's the case in every crossing guard situation, but the two that I witnessed on Irongate and at Cobblestone, it's dangerous. I'll give you a little example. The crossing guard has had to report 2 incidents of nearly being hit by cars driven by teachers from the local school. I mean, ask any resident who drops their children off and they will tell you the same thing. So part of the issue, I think, is that we need to get out there and look to see just how difficult and dangerous the situation is, and it's not getting any easier. Construction is not going away, the area is growing, the number of kids going to school is growing. One little tidbit that I thought was amazing, the principal of the Catholic school said more children walk to school at the Catholic school than on any school he's ever been to. So we can't say it's all about parents driving their children to school. There are lots of children walking to school. They are at a danger unless we take some action.
Councillor Miller.
Just a question on the motion, Mr. Mayor. The last part, it says that the recommendations should be implemented by the end of the first quarter of 2020. Do we know what those recommendations are at this point?
No, it doesn't say that the recommendations should be. It's making recommendations for implementation by the end of quarter 2020.
Oh, okay.
So it's saying take this transportation master plan, make the first tangible deliverable the traffic calming study for the Cobblestone area by the end of the first quarter 2020. Implementation will take whatever it takes beyond that to follow through on the actions.
Okay, so you're not, okay, so the way I read it, and this is just my interpretation, is that you were looking for the recommendations to be implemented by the first quarter of 2020, and that's not the case. Is that correct?
I'm looking for recommendations to council for implementation.
Okay.
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have to say that I drive into Brantford quite often on Erie Ave, and it's a very busy street. And there's 2 schools along the end of Erie Ave. And there's a crossing guard there, and she has to walk out into traffic on Erie Ave with no stop sign and stop the traffic to cross children across Erie Ave. That's why the crossing guard is there, to assist the children. It's not a 4-way stop, but it is an intersection. And we all know we have to yield to pedestrians, but children do need the aid of our crossing guards. And when the children aren't there, having all these additional stop signs are probably going to, in my opinion, frustrate the people that drive in those subdivisions if those stop signs aren't really needed. So I think that what's been said about our county crossing guards and the training they receive is very good information for us to consider. And I know you've been down there and seen the busyness in the mornings, but when we discussed this at Public Works, several of these recommendations, I thought, were contrary to what we're promoting in our Brant Safe Street strategy. And I'm wondering, Mr. Mayor, if we could hear from our general manager on this motion?
All right, I think there's still more conversation at the table first.
Okay.
Councillor Ferrier?
So I actually grew up on 9th Ave. That's in Brantford, Fatima, the school then, and Bellevue. It's not an apples to apples comparison. I don't think it's a fair comparator. There are more stop signs in that area, and there are also natural traffic calming measures such as tighter streets, double-sided parking, etc. So I don't think that's a great comparator, having grown up there and walked to school every day of my childhood there. I don't believe, and maybe we can get clarification from the presenter of this motion, I don't believe you were criticizing the training or the ability of the crossing guards, but that the area and the engineering is not as safe as it could be, which puts them at enhanced risk, not because of any of their actions or because of any of the training of staff. That might have been lost, but I'd like clarification on that, because I would agree with our CAO that they are well-trained and excellent at their job.
Thank you for that helpful clarification. That is exactly right. It is a physical, structural issue. It's not a training issue. It's not a commitment issue.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if I could, a couple things. And we've talked about situations in Oakland. We've talked about situations in Scotland. We're talking about situations in Paris. I agree to a point that each situation is different and it needs to be looked at different. They may all go into the Brant Safe Streets when it's all done and said, but I think there's different things that are needed in different areas. For this particular area, and although it does say additional stop signs, there's been discussion, and I've had discussion over the years with this survey, that one stop sign going down Iron Gate at Savannah to make that a three-way stop is right exactly where the kids' entrance is to the school would suffice as far as, if you want to call them, extra stop signs in that area. We put the one down Cobblestone at Savannah, which in fact did slow down traffic, but as statistics would show you, that if you start throwing in stop signs, you are going to, upset drivers, so they're going to accelerate quicker when they leave the stop sign. So we're not talking a stop sign at every corner here. This is a unique situation in this survey, and I think it needs to be treated uniquely as all other places in the county when they're brought up for this type of thing. Needs to be looked at each individual situation. But I would agree that something needs to be done here. And again, it's not the fact of, even if we put it to a 40-kilometer-an-hour zone, that's not to say that people are going to drive 40 kilometers an hour, because they won't. But if the speed limit is set at 40, they might do 60, because right now it's set at 50 and sometimes they're doing 80. So again, it's all as far as safety for the kids and everybody in mind here in this situation. So I support what's going on here, and I think this could be a good start to our Brant Safe Streets.
Councillor Gatward is asked to have Mr. Bradley speak to it. Do you know
No,
that?
it was General Manager Walton.
Oh, Mr. Walton, do you have anything to add?
Through the mayor to council, this is sort of like being on the hot seat. Staff have given recommendations on this to council and the Public Works Committee before. We have the Brant Safe Streets strategy. We really think that we should follow that. What's really been proven time and time again in this municipality and many others is setting low speed limits has almost no impact on the way people drive. They drive to what they perceive the safety of the street is and the conditions to which they can safely drive. So artificially setting low speed limits has time and time again in this county and elsewhere been shown to be ineffective. We have provincial highways, former provincial highways here within this community here, which have been designed 80 kilometers an hour, which we've set down to 60, and now everybody complains about speeding there. Well, why is that happening? Because people are driving to the speed to which those roads were actually designed, and well designed by the province of Ontario. So what we really think should happen is we should, through the Brant Safe Streets strategy, go and a holistic look at this and bring recommendations back to council and do this in a holistic, big picture look, and not do the things that are in Brant Safe Streets, which says in there that we shouldn't be artificially setting them low. We have some speed data in this area, which would show that on average, there isn't a big speeding problem there. And yes, 15% of the people are going more than 50 or 52 kilometers an hour. But if we really analyze that speed, there's a whole band in there where they're only a couple of kilometers above that. The people that are driving 80 in that subdivision, that's an enforcement issue. We will never stop that from happening no matter what we set the speed at. And having people think it's safer because we've set it lower doesn't help that person that steps out in front of a car that's going too fast. So it does get down to what the public and the residents will do. If we can't get the residents to buy into what the speed limit should be, we'll never make it safer for anyone. So it's a societal problem. And actually, the design of these streets here for traffic calming and whatever is actually not bad. This is not a Cobblestone is a long street, but in the area of the schools there, you have to stop at the three-way stops. You have to go around the Granville Circle. It's not that you can bomb around in front of the actual schools. So I think we need to look at a holistic thing here and look at not doing a couple of implementations of measures that may make things worse in another spot. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll preface my comments by saying that I agree with John and John that this is a problem area. There's no question about that. There's 2 schools there. We have to do what we can to protect the students there and protect the families that live in the subdivision. But that's not unlike any other area in the county that has similar problems. North Paris, and we'll go back to situations there. We actually direct the truck traffic past the school on Silver Street. We do that purposely. And that's not a good idea, I don't think, from a safety perspective, but and we've had complaints about there. There's a lot of construction going on in North Paris as well. A lot of commotion associated with that. And I guess my biggest problem is to put all the resources in one area is not fair to the other areas that have similar, unique concerns. The 2 elementary schools in Burford are bisected by a road that services trucks. And there's factories at the end of it. So you have transport trucks going between the 2 schools. You have Highway 53, crossing guards stopping cars on Highway 53. Which is known for speeding in that area, and we have 2 little signs there. So we've had, I guess if you've been here long enough, as some of the members on the road committee have been, we're inundated with concerns, valid concerns, and pressing concerns about speeding in the county. That's why we developed and put resources toward that program. I agree with the staff on this. Even the fact of initiating a full traffic calming study, I've got no idea what that's going to cost. It might take up our whole budget that we've set aside for this. I don't know. The idea of 40-kilometer-an-hour zone in the Cobblestone subdivision is maybe a good idea, but maybe there's been a movement toward the all urban areas 40 kilometers an hour. Maybe the whole town of Paris should be 40 kilometers an hour. Maybe that's what we should be focusing on. There's just this resolution focuses on one issue, and we need to be focusing on all issues contemporaneously. This may be a priority area, and I think it probably is, and I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that this is any more important than the elementary schools in Burford or the 2 elementary schools in North Paris or St. George. But we need to approach it holistically, as staff says, and I would like to move a motion to refer this to the Brant Safe Streets Strategy. And it's a circular argument, but that puts it in context with all the other areas in the county that are risky areas. This whole thing started in the village of Harley when when people were complaining that people were blowing through the four-way stop sign and going 80 and a 60 with the park there and no sidewalks and putting a, it's speeding is a problem. It's an issue. And we've developed a strategy to do that. My suggestion is to let that strategy work its way through, put more resources to that in a budget situation. I don't even know where our budget stands. We put so many dollars into this strategy. I'm not sure whether it's been expended or not, but to take all of what is being suggested here is a pretty good hit on that, and it will solve perhaps some of the issues in the Cobblestone area, but it's not going to solve anything in North Paris. It's not going to solve anything in the Scotland area or the Oakland area or the St. George area or any other area that are valid problem areas. So I don't support the resolution, but I do support doing something to protect the people in that area from the traffic when it gets out of hand.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you for your support of it. This is not one issue. I mean, just look at that diagram. There are 8 different traffic issues there. At the heart of it are 2 elementary schools with nearly 1,000 kids. There is no other place in the county that has that situation. Burford does not. My grandson goes to Burford School. I know exactly the disposition of the 2 schools. They are not side by side. They don't have the same issues. A full traffic calming study was actually suggested by staff when I've had the conversation with them about how to formulate this motion. So I think they know pretty well what they've got to do. And I'm not suggesting we apply all resources that the county has to this area, but I do suggest we apply enough resources to address what is a transparently difficult and potentially dangerous situation. And to Rob Walton's point, I agree, people probably don't drive to speed limits, but the evidence, the research that I've found tells me people will drive a little bit above whatever you set the limit to be. And the evidence that we have, or the data we have, says that the lower you have that speed limit, the less likely you are to do damage to children. But it's not just children that are complaining about the traffic issues in this subdivision. I get them from residents, adult residents. I get them from seniors who live at the end of Cobblestone Drive in number 10. I get all kinds of complaints for people that just visit that area, trying to get out of Cobblestone onto Rest Acres. Now, I know we'll resolve that problem with a roundabout in the future. I brought forward, and we signed off earlier, the review of truck routes and streets that are prohibited to have truck traffic. The whole of South Paris is free to large truck trailers. The whole of the north of Paris, aside from Silver Street and Grand River Street, is not. So this area needs attention, and it needs it now. And it's all very well saying, pass it to Brant's Safe Street Strategy, but for goodness sake, somebody tell me, what is Brant's Safe Street Strategy in terms of people actually applying their time and effort to this task? As far as I know, we've got pace cars going, we've ordered some monitors, we have not done anything more than that. I think our credibility is on the line, and we're putting the risk of people in this subdivision on the line by not taking action now.
Councillor Laferriere.
I think this is a really good discussion on both sides. I think there's a lot of really good information coming on both sides, a lot to chew on. One question I had, though, is it's my understanding that a report is coming to from staff about 40-kilometer-an-hour school zones more broadly. When is that coming to this committee or council or a committee?
Maybe I can answer that. I asked the staff that very question, and they said they were unaware of it.
They said which?
They said they were unaware of any direction from council to provide such a report.
Well, I believe I received an email from a staff member that was something was coming in the near future, but I could be wrong. Okay. You know, the way I see this, and I'm going to support the resolution because it says do something. It's not overly prescriptive. It's not saying do everything. And I think people around the table are saying let's do something and let's test an area. you know, we can't look at something that's, and by the way, if anybody wanted to present something about Burford or St. George or North Paris or anything like that, I would look at it with the same eyes. I'm going to support this, but I think it's really a discussion, and I won't be vilifying anybody who doesn't support it either.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley, do you want to answer any questions before we go any further?
Mr. Chair, if I could, there were a couple questions about the Brant Safe Street strategy. I just wouldn't mind providing clarification, just so council, appreciates what it originally approved and what we recommended. So it did evolve from a discussion about changing and reviewing speed limits, and I think from that discussion, as I recall, there was a suggestion that, and we've done this before, and council was looking for something a little more concrete, a little more long-term, a little more robust, and something that was based on the 3 E's. Of traffic management, engineering, education, and enforcement. So we went away and we spent 2 or 3 months and we came back with the Brant Safe Street strategy. And I mean, I'd like to point out, it is a long-term strategy. It's not a short-term strategy. It had a long-term deployment plan, and we are on target for deploying that plan as it was laid out in the strategy. And I think generally it's a good strategy. It may not be achieving everything that council maybe at this point is thinking it wants to achieve, and that's fine. We can certainly add to it. But just as a reminder, it had four kind of strategies or actions, I guess. The first one was to develop a pace car program, and we've done that, and it's had modestly. It's actually uptake, I think, is improving every week. So. The second was to develop mobile street systems, signage systems, with a bunch of electronic signs that flashed and provided messages, some permanent messaging signs, and a bit of a neighborhood blast. And we've ordered those signs. I believe they're trickling in now. Yeah, a bunch of kind. We're calibrating them. They're digital signs. They have modems in them so they can communicate with us and back and forth. And as part of that, there was also a big public input process, which we've also successfully rolled out, and it has received a bunch of public input. And at last, I think we met last week, and there's about 60 streets that have come forward of varying levels. Some it's just one person, some I'm sure that this area has received significant input. So we've got about 60 streets that we're going to deploy those mobile systems out into. And that'll start in the next couple weeks, and it'll go on for several years. And most of the money, there was a question that we budgeted this year, was spent on those signs and the development of the pace car program. There's a bit left over, and we're going to, I think, buy a few more signs. The third part was what I would call passive road diet projects on selected streets. And that's the report you'll get in the future. As we start to look in at this list that we're building from the public input, we'll develop a list of streets that we can start putting in some more permanent, not fully permanent, not concrete, but posts and maybe permanent flashing electronic signs, et cetera, et cetera. And those are for future years. Nothing of those was going to happen this year, but we visualized that this money would continue to carry in the budget, and every year we would do about 5 kilometers of those kind of things throughout the county. I mean, we could disperse them very widely, and Council, Public Works Committee will make that decision. And the last one was to frame the Brant Safe Street Strategy philosophy into major road projects. And these are big projects. These are like the Grand River Street North environmental assessment and urbanization. And so these are very long-term things. We're doing that right now as we go through road design. We're considering that. So we're on schedule with that program. It was a long-term project. It had a 6-year, I believe, timeline to it. So it was not designed to do a whole bunch at once. It was designed to do a lot of things over a long period of time. Because the status quo that we've been doing, which was to tinker with the speed limits and use basic signage, was not as effective as we'd hoped for. So I just wanted to clarify that's what the Brant Safe Street Strategy, that's what it said, that's what Council approved, and that's what we're implementing. And if anyone feels that we're not doing that, please address that with me, and I will pull the strategy out. We can go through it and identify. The last thing I want to mention, if there's a desire for a report on 40-kilometer-hour speed limits on school zones, I think Council needs to direct us to do that. At this point, we don't have direction. I think there was some confusion with a couple of intermediate staff members, but really that should be going through Council as a resolution. So thank you for your patience, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the resolution be tabled at this time to allow staff to bring forward a report regarding the 40-kilometer-mile zone issue, as well as the The general manager indicated some of the suggestions are contrary to the Safe Street strategy, so a report on that, as well as a report on the costing and time implementation of conducting a full traffic study. In other words, we need a report on some of these things to make a educated decision. So I'll move that it be tabled, seeking a seconder.
I have a seconder in Councillor Coleman. Any discussion? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I won't be supporting that, as Robert may not be surprised.
Just a point of order, actually, the tabling motion is not to be discussed, it's to be voted on. Time and place, but not a discussion.
So we're gonna vote on it first? Are we clear on what we're voting on? Yeah. All those in favor? Table for a report. All those in favor of tabling it for a report? Opposed?
Motion's carried.
Okay. So we're tabling it for now. Bringing it back. First of all, today is our anniversary of this council. We've been elected 1 year today. And one of the frustrations, or my biggest frustration as after being elected, is the timing of things and how long it takes to get everything done. I was quite a big person in my own life before I was elected to mayor of the county, and I got to control the time frame for any of my projects or anything that I was doing. And I find it very frustrating to have to follow procedure and have to follow committee and have to follow programs. And this is, I think, your frustration too, Councillor Bell. In your world, you are able to make decisions and act on them at your own pace. And I think the frustration that I feel after you brought this resolution is the same as yours. We make decisions, or in my life, I've made decisions on my own quite quickly, and I find this whole process. I have a lot of hope in this Safe Streets project, and it is, as Michael said, it's a multi-year program, and this is so new. And I understand that your safety concerns, and I do understand the frustration of the process. That's what I wanted to say. It's too bad, but and Councillor Chambers, I think, is right. There's problems all over the county that are equally as important. So with that being said, if there's no other discussion, we'll go on to number 14. This is other business, which I said I needed at the beginning of the meeting. I'm going to be out of the country for a couple of weeks, and I have opted to ask Councillor Pierce to step in as the mayor if need be, if an emergency or something comes up. I've done most of the paperwork that I need to do while I'm out of the country, but that's what I would like. I'm seeking a seconder. Councillor Bell. If there's no opposition to that, I'd like to call a vote on Mr. Pierce taking over while I'm out of the country. All those in favor? Thank you for doing that for me. With that being said, Councillor Howes, I believe you have a resolution.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell for us to go in camera.
All those in favor? We're now in camera.
Second by Councillor Chambers, that the Corporate Development Committee report of October 7th, 2019 be approved.
Any questions for Councillor Miller? That weren't there a minute ago. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. Bylaws, number 16. Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that the following bylaws now be read for the first time. Bylaw numbers 133-19 to bylaw number 143-19. This is first reading.
All those in favor?
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine. Bylaws second reading, that the following bylaws now be read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted, and that's bylaw number 133-19 down to bylaw 143-19.
Are there any questions before we do it for the third time? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that the following bylaws now be read for the third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Bylaws number 133-19 to bylaw 143-19.
All those in favor?
It's nice not having to stand for questions.
Thank you. Next meeting is Tuesday, November the 26th at 6 o'clock. Happy Halloween.